When it comes to Nancy Culp and Buddy Ebsen, their story is the kind that makes you feel like you're getting a little bit closer to themselves. The lives of these two individuals were already filled with the kinds of experiences that could fill entire books before the Beverly Hillbillies brought them into the same spotlight. But here's the thing. The events that took place prior to that legendary show really set the stage for the tension that had been building up between them in the years that followed. Let's begin with Nancy, shall we? Her appearance was not that of a typical Hollywood star. Her parents, Robert and Marjorie Culp, did not have any other children, and she was born in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. While she was growing up, her mother was a teacher and eventually became a principal at a school. Her father was a traveling salesman who was constantly on the move. When Nancy was still a young child, her family relocated to Miami, and she grew up in a world that was structured and educational. By 1943, she had completed her education in journalism and appeared to be prepared for a life in which she would be writing rather than appearing in front of the camera. In spite of this, Nancy's journey was not a walk in the park. In the course of her work for the Miami Beach Tropics, a local newspaper, she conducted interviews with notable figures such as Clark Gable and members of the royal family such as the Duke and Duchess of Windsor. Certainly not a trivial matter, is that correct? After that, World War II came knocking, and Nancy did not consider her options. She decided to leave her studies in order to move to the United States, in the Navy Reserve. Imagine her as a young woman who is full of determination and who is serving her country while earning the rank of lieutenant. Before we move on, let's take a moment to pause and consider Buddy Ebsen as a potential candidate. There was no comparison between him and Nancy that could be made. The dream of Buddy was to become a dancer. He was born and raised in Orlando, Florida. The Baby of Stairs was the moniker that was given to him and his sister Vilma when they first began performing on the vaudeville circuit. Buddy exuded an air of breezy, unpretentious allure. Watching him dance was a popular activity. Nevertheless, life was not without its challenges. When Buddy arrived in New York with just enough money to buy a sandwich, he realized that he needed to work hard in order to make ends meet. One's efforts were rewarded. In a short amount of time, Hollywood was not far behind Broadway when it came calling. Buddy was able to secure roles in musicals, danced with Shirley Temple, and even received a request from Walt Disney himself to assist in animating Mickey Mouse's movements with his assistants. But the circumstances were not always so enchanted. A significant obstacle was placed in Buddy's path when he was chosen to play the role of the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz. Do you agree that it sounds like the perfect job? A little less so. Aluminum dust was present in the makeup that they used, and it could have been fatal for him. In the end, he was admitted to the hospital, and the role was filled by another individual. After that, Buddy pursued other opportunities, such as teaching naval officers during World War II and sailing. Although he was known for his laid-back demeanor, he had experienced a number of challenges in his life. Take into consideration Nancy and Buddy, two individuals who come from entirely different worlds and who each have their own peculiarities and motivations. By the time the 1950s arrived, Nancy had already relocated to the golden age of Hollywood. She had taken a job in the publicity department of MGM and recently gotten married, although the marriage did not last. When she was discovered, a director commented that she had the perfect face for acting. Soon after, she began appearing in a variety of small roles, ranging from a maid on I Love Lucy to a drunken waitress on Maverick at various points in her career. The sharp wit and no-nonsense attitude that Nancy possessed allowed her to steal scenes, despite the fact that she was not a leading lady in the film industry. During this time, Buddy was hard at work establishing a niche for himself in the world of television. Audiences couldn't help but fall in love with him because he had a talent for portraying characters who were simple and grounded in reality. Someone who was dependable and easy to collaborate with, he had already established a reputation for himself. At the very least, that is how the majority of people perceived him. Now, however, things start to take an interesting turn. It wasn't until the late 1950s that Nancy and Buddy's lives began to intersect in the realm of television. In spite of the fact that the town was not particularly large, they were not exactly working side by side yet. Not only was Nancy gaining a reputation as an intelligent and hardworking actress, but she was also known for her strong opinions and her willingness to speak her mind loudly. Buddy, on the other hand, was known for having a more conventional outlook, the kind of perspective that could be considered somewhat archaic. In the years leading up to the formation of the Beverly Hillbillies, both were actively seeking out opportunities wherever they could. Nancy appeared as a guest on a number of well-known television shows. She was aware that she did not have the typical Hollywood appearance, but that did not deter her from pursuing her goals. Buddy, on the other hand, was alternating between westerns, dramas, and the occasional comedy. She leaned into her distinctive style and played characters that were quirky and memorable. On television shows such as Gunsmoke and Maverick, he played antagonists, demonstrating that he was not afraid to take on roles that revealed a darker side of his personality. In their own unique ways, both had established themselves in Hollywood by the early 1960s. However, neither of them had yet discovered the role that would make them a household name. It was inevitable that this would change once the Beverly Hillbillies came into existence. It was like a rocket taking off when the Beverly Hillbillies first appeared on television screens worldwide. Suddenly, the Clampetts, a family from the countryside, found themselves surrounded by the glitz and glamour of Beverly Hills, and people couldn't get enough of them. The show was hilarious, endearing, and even a little bit ridiculous, and it managed to keep millions of viewers throughout each and every episode. Where's the heart of it all? In addition to Buddy Ebsen, Nancy Culp, in the process of casting for the role of Jane Hathaway, the efficient and birdwatching secretary who works for Mr. Drysdale, the banker of the Clampett family, the creators of the Beverly Hillbillies were aware that they needed to find a unique and exceptional actor to play the role. It was a perfect match for Nancy. Is that Buddy? It was by that time that he had become a well-known figure in the sector. The fact that he has a laid-back personality and a talent for portraying characters who are wise and fatherly made him an obvious choice for the role of Jed Clampett. Despite having a limited amount of formal education, Jed was the most reliable member of the Clampett family. He possessed a great deal of common sense. The audience felt that they could trust and root for Jed because Buddy brought warmth and charm to the role, which made Jed a sympathetic character. Almost immediately after the show's debut, it became an instant hit. People were captivated by the story of a family from the Ozarks who discovered oil and moved into a mansion in Beverly Hills while they were completely out of their element. It wasn't just that the Clampetts were funny, they were easy to relate to. As a result of their straightforward manners colliding with the extravagant lifestyle of Beverly Hills, a variety of hilarious misunderstandings were created. In addition, Nancy Culp, who played the role of Miss Jane, was present in the midst of everything. As a secretary, Miss Jane was not like any other. In situations where her boss, Mr. Drysdale, became overly greedy, she was a shrewd and loyal employee who frequently served as a voice of reason. There was a genuine concern that she had for the Clampett family, particularly Jethro, Jed's nephew. In addition, if you have ever watched the show, you are aware that Miss Jane had a slightly romantic interest in Jethro. She was portrayed by Nancy with such a combination of humor and heart that it was impossible not to fall in love with her. She was even nominated for an Emmy for her performance in the role. In the same vein, Buddy's portrayal of Jed was equally iconic. Jed served as the cohesive force that held the family together. During the time that Granny was causing trouble, Ellie Mae was able to enchant everyone with her sweetness. Moreover, Jethro stumbled his way through a series of illogical schemes, one after the other. Jed maintained his composure. When it came to a family that was full of chaos, he was the voice of reason. The catchphrase that he used, "doggies," eventually became ingrained in the popular culture of the United States. However, this is where things start to become a little bit problematic. During the course of the show, the characters of Nancy and Buddy shared a warm and friendly relationship, not so much when it's off-screen. Neither of their acting styles nor their level of professionalism was the source of the tension that existed between them. Rather, it was something more profound. It was impossible to ignore the fact that their personalities and, more importantly, their perspectives on the world were in direct opposition to one another. To put it another way, Buddy was a politically conservative. In addition to that, he did not hesitate to express his viewpoints. On the other hand, Nancy advocated for a more liberal viewpoint. A simple difference of opinion was not the only issue. On a fundamental level, they had very different perspectives on the world. Imagine for a moment that you have to spend each day working with someone who represents everything that you do not agree with. Exactly this was the situation that Nancy and Buddy were facing. The other members of the cast have stated that they would engage in these heated debates, which would sometimes last for weeks on end. It wasn't just a friendly banter or a lighthearted teasing session, it was a serious matter. While on set, both actors maintained their professionalism in spite of the tension. They were compelled to do so. Numerous millions of people tuned in to watch the show each and every week, making it an enormous success. There was a period of time when it was the most popular show on television, and its popularity did not fade away quickly. People adored the Clampetts and the antics that they performed. In addition, despite the fact that Nancy and Buddy might have had different opinions in real life, they did an excellent job of bringing their characters to life. Nancy's character, Miss Jane, quickly rose to prominence as one of the show's most cherished characters. Despite the fact that she was not flashy or over the top, she was approachable. She was the kind of person who put in a lot of effort, made an effort to do the right thing, but she always seemed to find herself in the middle of the troubles that were caused by someone else. And despite the fact that her crush on Jethro was probably just a joke, there was a certain sweetness to it as well. While this was going on, Buddy's Jed was the steady hand that guided the Clampetts through one ridiculous situation after another. At all times, Jed maintained his composure, regardless of whether he was attempting to comprehend Beverly Hills high society or assisting Granny in the preparation of yet another batch of moonshine. It should come as no surprise that people kept tuning in week after week to find out what the Clampetts would do following the dot. However, despite all of the great things that happened, the tension that existed between Nancy and Buddy never really went away. There are those who believe that the situation became even more dire as the show progressed. It wasn't just a disagreement over politics, it was also a personal conflict. In addition to being intelligent and sharp, Nancy was not one to back down from a fight. It's true that Buddy was charming, but he also had a tendency to be stubborn. During the collision of those two forces, sparks were released. They were forced to remain in close proximity to one another because of the show. Both in their roles as Miss Jane and Jed, they went through a lot of scenes together, and despite the fact that they might have been smiling and laughing on screen, there was an underlying current of frustration that those who were paying attention were unable to ignore any longer. It was once stated by Donna Douglas, who played Ellie Mae, that they would argue for weeks about their different points of view. Consider how tense that set must have been. Are you able to imagine it? Despite this, they were both professionals, and they did not allow their disagreements to detract from the performance. However, this does not mean that it was a simple task. It requires effort to maintain a civil demeanor when working so closely with someone with whom you have a disagreement. However, they were successful in doing so, and the audience was never able to perceive the tension that was bubbling beneath the surface. When the run of the Beverly Hillbillies came to an end, the show had already established itself as a cultural phenomenon. Individuals continue to discuss it in the present day, and its influence can be observed in a great number of other shows. The conclusion of the show, however, did not signify the conclusion of the story that Nancy and Buddy were a part of. After the cameras had stopped rolling, their differences would continue to have an impact on the way in which they interacted with one another. She made the decision to go in a completely different direction. And politics. She made a bid for a seat in the United States in 1984, many years after the show had concluded. This is the House of Representatives. Back then, she was 62 years old. In addition, Nancy was of the opinion that she could bring something of value to the table, despite the fact that some individuals questioned whether or not an actress could make the transition into politics. In the end, Ronald Reagan had already accomplished this, hadn't he? Nancy was a candidate for the Democratic Party in the 9th Congressional District of Pennsylvania. It was a challenging race from the very beginning. In addition to the fact that her opponent, Bud Schuster, had already served 6 terms, the district was overwhelmingly Republican. However, Nancy was not the type of person to back down from a threat. She put in a lot of effort during her campaign, connecting with people and passing on her ideas for change. She gave it her all, despite the fact that she was aware that the odds were stacked against her. The fact that Buddy Ebsen entered the fray and was not on her side was something that she had not anticipated happening. Buddy volunteered to record a radio advertisement for her opponent, despite the fact that she had no relationships to Pennsylvania or the race. In the advertisement, he referred to Nancy as being too liberal and accused her of using her celebrity status to have an influence on voters. It was more than just a clash of opinions. It was quite personal. It came as a surprise to Nancy. Her relationship with Buddy had been tense for many years. Nevertheless, this occurred to me as a betrayal on an entirely new level. After some time had passed, Nancy did not hold back when she discussed it. Her statement was that Buddy had no business getting involved and that he ought to have stayed out of the situation. During one of the interviews, she expressed her obvious frustration by stating that he is not the kind and gentle Jed Clampett that you saw on the show. Despite the fact that they had never been able to get along, she made it abundantly clear that she would never have considered doing something like that to him. Even after a number of years had passed, you could still hear the pain in her words. The advertisement worked against Nancy's campaign. In fact, it could have damaged it. Her opponent received more than 66% of the vote, which resulted in her losing the election by a significant margin. Following the event, Nancy stated that she did not hold Buddy responsible for her loss. However, the pain caused by his actions continued to affect her. She left Pennsylvania for a while in order to get her thoughts organized, and she didn't come back until she had had some time to think about what had occurred. For his part, Buddy did not appear to have any regrets about the actions he took at the time. What he had said about Nancy was something that he stood by and believed wholeheartedly. The passage of time, however, appears to have caused him to experience some degree of regret as well. As he neared the end of his life, he acknowledged his regret regarding the advertisement and the manner in which their feud had become out of hand. Regrettably, by that point, it was already too late to have the relationship completely repaired. After the campaign, Nancy and Buddy did not communicate with each other very often, and when they did make amends, it was only for a short period of time. Nancy discovered that teaching was a passion that allowed her to channel her knowledge and experience into something meaningful. This passion provided her with solace. She was given the opportunity to work as an artist in residence at Juniata College, a modest liberal arts institution that is located in the tranquil countryside of Pennsylvania. At that location, she instructed acting classes and served as a source of motivation for a large number of students who entered her classroom. The time that she spent at Juniata appeared to be a turning point in her life. Away from the glitz and glamour of Hollywood and the turmoil of politics, Nancy discovered a community that appreciated her for the warmth and insight she always brought to the table. Later on, students expressed how much they admired her, not only because of her fame in Hollywood, but also because of her commitment to assisting others in developing their potential. She brought humor and heart to her lessons, and as a result, her students had the impression that the stage could be a place for anyone, regardless of where they came from. While she was telling tales about her time spent on the Beverly Hillbillies and offering words of wisdom about life, both on and off the stage, it is not difficult to picture her beaming with happiness. In addition to that, Nancy was the performer in a number of productions at the local theater, and she also made a few appearances on television as a guest star. Despite the fact that she put more of her attention on teaching, she never completely abandoned her acting career. Without a doubt, she had a deep appreciation for the power of storytelling, which was reflected in her later work. It was clear that she loved the craft. What's more, she didn't just act. Outside of the public eye, she led a life that was rich and full of vitality. It didn't matter if it was her students, her friends, or her neighbors. Nancy had a natural talent for connecting with people, and she made the most of the time she had available. Nevertheless, Nancy was confronted with a fresh obstacle in the year 1990 when she was informed that she had cancer. She continued to teach and remain active in her community for as long as her health permitted, despite the fact that she had been diagnosed with a disease that she had never before been diagnosed with. Both her friends and her co-workers referred to her as courageous and strong, qualities that she had consistently demonstrated throughout her life. In 1991, she passed away, leaving behind a legacy that extended far beyond her role as Miss Jane Hathaway. Her legacy was extensive. Perseverance, creativity, and a refusal to let a single chapter of her life define her were the defining characteristics of Nancy's story. While this was going on, Buddy Ebsen was traveling down his own path in his later years. His work slowed down as he got older, despite the fact that he continued to work in the entertainment industry. Following the conclusion of the Beverly Hillbillies, Buddy continued his acting career by appearing in a variety of films and television shows. The popular detective series Barnaby Jones, which he starred in and which aired for a number of years and kept him in the public eye, was another one of his television roles. On the other hand, regardless of what he did, people couldn't help but think of him in conjunction with Jed Clampett. That character, with his quaint small-town appeal and catchphrase that became instantly recognizable, had grown to be over the top. Despite appearances to the contrary, Buddy did not appear to be bothered by the association. Despite the fact that it occasionally resulted in him being typecast, he embraced the love that fans had for Jed. However, in private, it was not always an easy task. Despite the fact that Buddy handled the situation with grace, he frequently appeared at events and interviews where he joyfully reminisced about his time spent on the Beverly Hillbillies. Imagine building a career that was full of variety and talent only to be remembered for one role. Later on in his life, he penned a memoir in which he detailed his experiences in Hollywood, his professional life, and yes, even the infamous feud he had with Nancy. Buddy had a lot of things to do outside of acting that kept him occupied. He was an accomplished sailor who liked to spend a significant portion of his leisure time on the water. In addition to acting, he also dabbled in writing, and he wrote novels, which provided him with an additional creative outlet. Buddy had always been a man of many talents, and he kept himself active and engaged, even as the years passed. He found ways to keep himself busy and engaged. As far as his private life was concerned, Buddy had a long and happy marriage to Dorothy Knott, who was his third wife. He also spent his later years surrounded by his family. It is remarkable that he lived to the age of 95 before passing away in the year 2003. At that point in time, the majority of his contemporaries had already passed away, and he was one of the few living connections anyone had to the golden age of television. His passing signified the end of an era, but his legacy continued to live on through the innumerable reruns of the Beverly Hillbillies and the recollections of those who had worked with him. As I look back on their story, it seems like it was a collision between two powerful personalities who were unable to find anything they had in common. Their differences caused a rift that was difficult to bridge, despite the fact that they were both extraordinarily talented, passionate, and fiercely opinionated. Despite this, it is impossible to ignore the magic that they created together on screen. The fact that they were able to make millions of viewers laugh and feel warm while playing the roles of Jed and Miss Jane is evidence of their professionalism and talent. Reassured following the event, they took advantage of the situation to teach him about the importance of leaning on family during difficult times, as well as about the importance of staying resilient and having empathy. It is without a doubt that the compassionate response of George's parents will leave an impression that lives on forever. It demonstrated that his feelings are valid, even in the face of enormous pressure from the public, and that his family is there to support him unconditionally. During this moment, the general public was given a powerful reminder that despite their titles and crowns, the royal family is, at their core, a family that works together to overcome the challenges that life throws at them. Following the continuation of the event, George was able to regain his composure with the assistance of his parents. Even though they were only fleeting, his tears left an indelible mark on those who were present to witness them. In addition, the family's response, which was both loving and genuine, served to further strengthen the admiration and connection that millions of people have for the contemporary royal family. This moment, which was captured in the unfiltered nature of live television, was a profound reflection of their humanity, their unity, and their unwavering dedication to one another. Once Prince George broke down in tears on live television, it was no longer a private moment. Rather, it became a phenomenon that was felt all over the world. George's tears sparked an emotional tidal wave, capturing the hearts of millions of people all over the world. This occurred in an era in which royal appearances are dissected down to every detail. Social media erupted with reactions in a matter of moments, transforming a fleeting moment of vulnerability into a viral sensation that resonated across a wide range of cultures, ages, and nationalities. On social media platforms such as Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, there was an overwhelming number of posts dedicated to George's emotional moment. Within a matter of minutes, the hashtag #ChariPrinceGeorge became popular as individuals from a wide variety of backgrounds expressed their thoughts on the young royal's sentiments. Others have voiced their admiration for George's bravery, pointing out that even those who will one day become kings are still human. A groundswell of empathy and understanding was created as a result of the sharing of personal anecdotes by other individuals regarding the emotional experiences of their own children. The viewers were moved by the contrast between the formality of the royal setting and the raw humanity of George's tears. This contrast struck a chord with them. One user tweeted, "He's not just a prince, he's a child like any other," and this sentiment was repeated thousands of times elsewhere on the internet. As a result of the widespread dissemination of memes, heartfelt messages, and even fan art, the significance of the moment was captured, and it became firmly established as one of the most relatable royal moments in recent history. A number of commentators interpreted the event as a symbol of a monarchy that was undergoing change. In the past, the royal family was frequently perceived as being remote and inaccessible. They were bound by strict traditions and protocols that discouraged anyone from expressing their feelings in public. However, George's tears and the compassionate response from his parents, Prince William and Princess Catherine, presented a new narrative, a contemporary royal family that places a higher value on genuineness and connection than they do on stoic formality. One prominent commentator stated, "This is what we want to see from the royal family," and they were on the right track. As a result of the incident, the concept that the monarchy, despite being steeped in tradition, is evolving to meet the expectations of a modern world was reinforced. Real emotions, real people, and real parenting. In a public that frequently questions the institution's continued relevance, George's tears helped to humanize the organization and make it more approachable. In the moment that went viral, national boundaries were not relevant. Through their responses to George's tears, people from a variety of countries and cultures discovered that they shared a common ground. There were parents who empathized with the difficulties of calming down an emotional child, while there were also parents who praised the royal family for their ability to be relatable. The moment brought about a rare global consensus, with many people highlighting the fact that human emotions are shared by all people everywhere. Media outlets, which are typically quick to criticize, have adopted a tone of admiration for the individual. A number of headlines such as, "A future king shows his humanity," and "Prince George's tears break the royal mold," dominated the news cycle, which served to further emphasize the significance of the event. As a result of the event, analysts observed that the connection between the royal family and the general public was strengthened, particularly among younger generations who are more interested in authenticity than formality. It was also about what those tears represented instead. Within a society in which public figures are frequently expected to project an image of perfection, George's vulnerability was a welcome and refreshing change. Individuals were reminded that feelings are shared by all people, and that even those who were born into privilege experience moments of feeling overwhelmed. In the case of the royal family, the overwhelmingly positive response from the general public was probably reassuring. Their decision to embrace a more open and empathetic image was validated by this, demonstrating that moments of humanity have a profound impact on their audience. The emotional moment that Prince George experienced while appearing on live television was more than just a fleeting instance of vulnerability. Rather, it was a potent reminder of the humanity that lives behind the royal titles. A single tear-filled moment was all it took for the young prince to bridge the gap between the public and the monarchy. He did this by demonstrating that even those who are destined to sit on crowns and thrones are not immune to the complexities of human emotion. A profound impact was made on audiences all over the world by this extraordinary demonstration of unfiltered emotion. It offered a glimpse into the life of a young boy who was navigating enormous pressure and expectation, which was a departure from the traditional image of royalty, which is one that is polished, composed, and distant. Through his tears, George brought to the attention of the entire world the fact that the difficulties of maturing, the burden of responsibility, and the experience of loss are universal, regardless of one's social standing. The significance of the moment was further bolstered by the response of Prince William and Princess Catherine. They demonstrated the evolution of the royal family into a more contemporary and approachable institution by providing George with comfort through their compassionate and hands-on approach. In order to send a strong message about the significance of empathy, connection, and family, they made the decision to put their child's emotional well-being ahead of strict protocol. The public's perception of the monarchy's continued relevance in the modern world was strengthened by this moment. It demonstrated that the royal family, which is frequently assumed to be an enduring symbol of tradition, is capable of developing and adjusting to new circumstances. Moments like these are particularly meaningful because they are not about grandeur or ceremony. Rather, they are about the human experience that is shared by all people. This particular moment is likely to serve as a defining chapter in Prince George's journey, both as an individual and as a potential future leader. This is because Prince George is continuing to develop. It is a powerful reminder that the key to personal strength is not to repress one's feelings, but rather to accept and embrace them. And by doing so, George did more than just humanize himself. He also redefined what it means to be a royal in this day and age.